Boom. So we're live, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, and welcome some more. We are here with Propaganda, KJ-52, and probably in a really, really interesting point in our country's modern history. We're going to have really interesting, lively, and I'm convinced balanced talk about race, faith, and hip-hop right here with these two gentlemen who have been taught. That's what you've been talking about lately. Propaganda has always been known for that. Always known to be that guy, especially coming off of recent memory with songs like Pressure Puritans, and then you two also did the song together. So in light of all of that, in light of what's happening, in light of what's on everybody's mind, first say what's up, and then you two can just jump right on in.
Go for it.
How y'all doing? My name is Propaganda. Here with KJ, like I said. I obviously the concept of race and equality and social justice and hip-hop has been a theme in every album I've made, even in the Crimson Chord stuff, songs like Record Bond and things like that. It's always something that's kind of, when you're from a disenfranchised people group, say it with me, disenfranchised people group, you can't, it's kind of the subject's unavoidable. It's just a part of your life. So kind of shows up in my music.
I guess that was real significant for me to get Prop here because the song we did, which is really kind of a remake of the joint I did with Lecrae called They Like Me, but I felt like I honestly felt like the story behind it hadn't really been explored enough, and this gentleman was kindly enough to send me this really dope spoken word piece that we were going to use for a remix. It never got used, and so from there I basically just wanted to explore the concept a little deeper, and I thought what Prop added to it just really honestly was the catalyst that made me want to remake the song and take it from a song called They Like Me to a new song called Fight Music. And so my background comes from living half in a place called Ybor City, which is predominantly black and Cuban neighborhood, and then also in a predominantly all-white neighborhood called Palm Harbor. And then every summer I would go up to the Dirty Glove, where I know you're from, the God's Oven Mitt of America, North Michigan, which was very rural, very rural area. So I've had a very diverse background coming up. And thank you for taking the time out. I know this was your heart, and thanks to Rapzilla and this guy.
Yeah, dude.
Way cooler than I am.
Whatever. All day.
No, them Dubbs. I grew up on the west side of Detroit, so that puts me in. And plus, I guess for the sake, so everyone in the audience knows, I kind of had a bit of a mixed background and where kind of God's put me in life. I grew up in Detroit. I spent 2 years in Guam when I was living with my mom, and she was stationed in the military at the time. I spent 2 years in Guam, came back to Detroit, then graduated from high school, moved to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Whoa.
And then from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, out to New England. So God's kind of had me in some and now out here in the Bay Area. So God's also had me in some very diverse situations where I've had to be the one black guy in a room and try to have to not lose my mind. So we all kind of have some background here with being diverse cultures. So let's start with this. We'll start with KJ. You wanted to do a song like They Like Me. You wanted to do fight music, but why? Especially with someone who's had the history that you've had in hip hop music, and you've crossed so many spectrums. You've been on tour with George Bush, for crying out loud. Why
that happened
for such an interesting and diverse, it's such an interesting and quite honestly touchy topic.
Right. Well, I think when it came time to actually do the song with Lecrae, we were like, well, if we're doing something that I think fans want to hear, why not do something of significance? And why not do something that no one really seems to want to talk about? And that's the issue of cultural background, ethnicity, how it relates to hip-hop, how it relates to the church. We really had no palette to go from, but we just were like, let's just do the opposite of what people are thinking we're going to do, which is like one more turn-up anthem. So my thing was, I didn't know anything else to tell except my own story, and I think he felt the same way. But I think that's the reality, is that we all have a frame of reference to come from, and a lot of times we think it's our only reference, like our reference is the only reference, and everyone should bow down before our significant issues, problems, struggles, pains. But I think when it comes to this issue, I think the reality is that probably the real key is understanding the other man's situation. You know what I mean? And so that's just really where it came from. I'll be honest with you, when I did that song with him, I was really disappointed with the lack of any type of feedback. The feedback was, oh, it's cool they did a song together. Or the feedback was, well, we know Lecrae's in the Illuminati because he did this in the music video. Like, that was the feedback. I'm like, are you guys even listening to what we're trying to say here? But I think that's the reality, is that when it comes to someone who's a racist, it's always the other person is.
Yeah.
And but again, I felt like the issue wasn't explored enough. I felt like, why are we not talking about this? I mean, maybe on Twitter we are, but why are we not talking this as people that are significant to the genre? I've known Prop for years now. I always thought his perspective was so unique. But then when I actually heard what he did, you know, I'm a fan of lyrics, and so like the first thing he says, as if it's enough to boil color down to, or no, is enough to boil. It's basically saying it's you can't boil things down to just regions and color.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, it just it was like it's the opposite of what everybody else says.
Yeah.
So
you're supposed to be defined by your ethnicity and things like that.
Work. Now, KJ, you mentioned that you were surprised. One, you were surprised at the feedback, and you were surprised that people aren't talking about it.
Right.
Prop, I've heard it. No, you didn't say it. I'm not saying you said it, but it has been said by many people in our scene that people aren't talking about it. People with a platform aren't talking about it because they don't want to lose album sales from their white audience. Do you think there's any credibility to that statement?
Yeah, a credibility in the sense that are people saying that? I would say nobody's. I don't think people are saying it out loud, but they're definitely saying it. I think, but I think there's two sides to that. I think one side is like, everyone has a right to a lane as an artist, you know, and I think once you get into that lane, like whatever that is, I think you have the right to decide what that lane is, and I think you should play it well. You know what I mean? And if you feel like these are topics that my core fan base may need but won't be able to accept it from me, I think it's a legitimate decision that you can make as a career artist. It's just not the decision I made. The decision I made is this is who I am. Like I talk at every concert about being like the JV version of somebody else versus the varsity version of you. And like and I'm leaning into being the varsity version of me. And what that is like I feed on talking about uncomfortable things and as issue of social commentary. And I think what KJ was saying too about like seeing your own perspective as one thing, I think, or as one, I think it's important for me as an artist. Like I'm trying to spawn people to learn from rather than learn about. You know what I mean? Like you can learn about a person or about a people group, or you can learn from that people group. So yeah, there is a reality in saying, yo, this is the people that are in front of me, and the reality is they don't come to me for this. You know what I'm saying? And if you've made that decision as an artist, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? I just have not made that decision. My decision is my fan base will find me, but this is what I'm going to talk about. And if you've given me this platform, the Father has given me this platform, you shouldn't have bought the record. You know what I'm saying? Or come to the concert, because this is what you're gonna get from propaganda. And I'm willing, personally, I'm willing to take whatever stones that might be thrown. But what I'm finding from white audiences, quote unquote, is they're waiting for somebody to say it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Is they're craving someone to come graciously and graciously and authentically articulate a position that they may or may not kind of know of. You know what I'm saying?
And just to piggyback off that, I think there's a lot of white church people that are maybe shouldering white guilt, that feel they don't have the ability or the privilege to speak on these things.
Yeah.
For being labeled racist, or for being labeled, or just feeling like I'm in the majority. I can't comment on what a black man is going through. Or if I do, especially when we live in an age where everyone has an opinion, they feel like the backlash will be higher. So I think a lot of whites feel they can't speak on these things, to be honest with you. They just can't. I actually had a conversation about this guy yesterday, and one of the running conversations was that amongst youth conferences, there is now this push for diversity. Whether the event is diverse, whether the audience is diverse, it doesn't matter. But we want to present our event as diverse. And the sort of conversation was propaganda helps us to be that. So he's getting into very white, suburban, or college age stuff that I myself, who's been like the poster child for all things youth group and suburban, I mean maybe to one degree lower than say a Toby Mac or something like that, that I don't even get into. Which the idea is going, no, we're diverse. We got this black guy. He's got like dreads. He does poems and poems. You know what I'm saying? And so I thought, conversely, it reeks of tokenism. But the same token, it's almost saying at least we're trying. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was curious, like your perspective on that.
Yeah. I think there's. It's funny. I'm reminded of a rap of mine on the hands up joint, like the don't think I don't know 'em window dressing. It's all love. You know what I'm saying? I just came to provide y'all the soundtrack of life like around here. I'm just kidding. Anyway, but I think there's truth in tokenism. I think that it takes a pretty astute person of color or not to kind of recognize that might be the situation, but I think it takes a bigger person or an actual believer, someone who believes in God's control and God's sovereignty, to see that as an opportunity to leverage, And if a person is open enough, like that's why I said, like if you give me this mic, like I'm not gonna shy away. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like if I've been given that based on a track record of being, approachable, being biblical, trying to be authentic, maintaining a stature of humility, and just being authentically the person I am, and if it's awarded me, access to a suburban white audience, I'm going to try to speak to them with the same grace, that I would expect to be speaking back, but I'm gonna tell you the truth.
But do you ever feel like it's you now the spokesman?
Oh yeah. But what I'm saying
for hip hop or for your race.
But what I'm saying is, I'm gonna give you a really I'm saying hip hop. I'm just gonna work the angles. Like if that's what you're gonna, that may be your intention, but I got enough hustle in me, you know what I'm saying, to leverage that or turn that around for good. But I think again, it's important to be aware of it. Like I feel like there are situations where like, yo, no, these people are authentically either being treating me like a token, and I know I'm being treated like a token, so I kind of know where to put them categorically, you know what I'm saying? But then there's other situations where people, like you said, are just like, yo, it's not that we don't want to do it, we're just clueless, and then feel like if I do, I don't want to overstep my bounds and just say something out of ignorance, and it's not my heart, you know what I'm saying? And it's like sometimes I enjoy being that type of ambassador, being that person that can kind of traverse both worlds and kind of like a Rosetta Stone, if you will. Like I can translate to both of these. So if anything, it's like, let me look to you and put you at ease to say, I'm positive you're probably going to say something stupid, but know that that there's grace.
Can we have a top 5 stupid things heard?
Yes.
Please.
You're a Christian. Were you a Crip or a Blood?
That's
probably number 1. 2.
And which one were you?
I grew up in a Mexican neighborhood.
Okay. This is Norteño.
Yeah. 2 was, wow, I thought you'd drink something like Hennessy.
Number 3.
What was the Bryant one, the Obama one? Oh, he's like, man, I'm surprised you like Obama. I'm blacker than Obama. This is a white dude. That was hilarious. He don't count. I'm blacker than Obama.
Number 4, please.
Number 4. Oh man, what was number 4? Oh, number 4 was, you know, I'm a quote the lady. I got to do the whole quote. You know, I'm sorry, but if that boy Mike Brown was at home where he was supposed to be and not out there committing no crimes, he probably wouldn't have got shot. That's probably number 4. And number 5, which is the most consistent one. How do I say this? How do I make it concise? Can I touch your hair? Does it ever get wet?
Okay. Hold on. I'm going to throw a timeout on that because I would like to give my top 5 stupid
give me your
things
most top
overheard
5.
because
Okay.
I want to also give a base that sometimes this goes the other way. I've been approached and gone, yo, man, I'm trying to get like that, like that white kind of sales. So I was wondering if you would like how much you charge for features. So it went. Now that wasn't even a statement. I'm just giving you a frame of reference.
Okay.
So I've had the other flip where essentially someone goes, I want to get a suburban white audience sales. Let me get you on my record.
Okay.
So I've had that, but I actually used to be an inner city youth pastor in Fort Myers, Florida, for about 4 years. So my kids were all 100% bussed in, all black kids. Never had a single white or Hispanic kid. Long story short, I got I got my hair petted pretty much every time I went to the project. I have relatively hairy arms, almost Chewbacca-ish. I used to get petted on my arms. I got and the staff was all black too, so I would get from the staff, why do white people do that? I got you don't smell like a wet dog when it rains. That was a good one.
That's awful.
That was a good one. Where's Steve go?
that one took him out.
I got what was the other one? You sure you're not Hispanic? I used to get that one a lot in South Florida. And then one time was chastised heavily for having a fade because only black people are allowed to have
black
fades.
people can have fades.
So consequently, I used to carry this around like a chip on the shoulder, and I realized that a lot of things generally happen out of ignorance and generally just happen when you are the minority, whatever that looks like, that people sometimes are just generally curious and their mouth goes before their mind. Which I used to walk around with a chip on my shoulder. I always thought to be a white guy in hip-hop, you had to like fulfill these 3 little lanes, which was like crazy white boy Eminem, super over-the-top Irish rapper House of Pain, or psycho skate rap white kid Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
And I never really fit into any of those. So I can think for my identity was always a hard time. So
yeah, it's funny because there's an interesting like culture clash there in the sense that I know with minority communities, specifically with black community, I can speak most about that. Like we have a sense of kind of a collective identity, if you will.
Right.
So, a lot of times you feel like it's unfair for if you're the only black kid in the room to have to speak for all black people.
Right.
But at the same time, you kind of do. Like
Right.
our grandparents do. Why do our grandparents want us to go to college? Why should you succeed?
Right.
Because you're succeeding for all of us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So in some senses, it's like it's expected of you because the weight of our culture is on our shoulders. You are one of us. You're one of the few. We are strong. We're stronger together. Represent us well when you leave this house. So there's that. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like a light bulb to realize that that's apparently. It's not like every culture doesn't have it. You know what I'm saying? Like so as a black kid, when you ask a white boy something like, "Hey, why do all white people do that?"
Right.
It's like because we feel like I can answer that. Like if you ask me, something that I think all black people do, I feel like I can have an answer for you because it's kind of true. You know what I'm saying? So there's that, like you said, that level of ignorance to kind of like, oh my gosh, like you guys don't think like that. And then I think secondly, it's like, which is. It's funny, but it's true. It's like as a community, once we feel like you as kind of as a white man are safe,
right,
if you will, right?
Absolutely.
Then I feel more free to ask you questions that I probably wouldn't ask just your run of the mill dude, because I'm like, I'm just not gonna go through it. But it's like, okay, you around all the time. You know what I'm saying? This is something I've been curious about the whole time. You know what I mean? And I'm sure it probably works both ways. The only perspective I really know from top to bottom is the black man, and that's the way I felt. Like people know Thomas and myself have been friends for so long, so there are questions I've asked him or we've talked about that I probably wouldn't have before that. I mean, I was 19, you know what I mean? So there's so many things I would have never said to anyone else, except for the fact that, you know, we had 6-7 years of friendship under our belts when we first started talking about these things.
I think the funny thing is, I was actually thinking about this the other day. You know, it was that. Why did I not feel offended when those things happened? If someone was going to pet my head like I was a dog because I was in the projects and I was literally the only white guy there, I was not offended. If anything, it was like, oh, you like my haircut? All right. Like, I was like, maybe I'm accepted here. I think the reality is when you are the majority, you don't bear the weight of an entire ethnic identity unless you come from, say, a very Italian household, a very Jewish household, a very Irish household. Then you might bear the weight of being, you know, this very specific cultural identity. But I think by and large, most white people just don't walk around with that identity. They don't walk around with that burden. So the only time I really actually, to be honest with you, felt like I had to say something was at my church on staff, literally always being like, da 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 da. Why do white people do that? You know, like, da, 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 da.
So bad.
Why do white people do that? Like, after the 20th time, I was like, listen, I don't really know why white people like mayonnaise so much. I don't like mayonnaise, personally. I can't speak to the mayonnaise obsessions. I don't know why white girls love pumpkin spice lattes. I don't get it. I'm not pumpkin spice. That's I can't tell you. Maybe ask them. Either way, but you know, those things became like, that's the only time I probably ever got that issue. But I also came up in a time in hip-hop where the groups I listened to were Public Enemy, Brand Nubian, you know, like for some odd reason I was attracted to the most militant black rap possible, where it was essentially telling me that I am the epitome of everything wrong. And as I began to step into the arena and try to be a Christian hip-hop artist, opening up for Wu-Tang, you know, literally being the only white guy there, getting booed, getting, you know, this real anger that just comes with being in the Deep South sometimes. The frustrations of those things, realizing that I can either walk around with this chip on my shoulder or I can just go, the love of God is bigger than those circumstances, and also understanding maybe this guy has maybe not a justification for why he feels this way, but if I can at least understand why he feels this way, why does 5% theology appeal to somebody growing up in Shaolin, you know what I'm saying? Then at least I can understand that person better and hopefully try to dispel some of whatever his misconceptions might be.
That's good.
We just completely tangent.
That's good.
I still don't like mayonnaise.
Hey, I don't eat watermelon in public.
We can't hear you, though.
Oh, we lost Steve.
Steve, you got no sound, bro.
You don't hear me?
There you are.
All right, there we go. Now we got you.
Yeah. I don't eat watermelon in public. It's just a thing. I don't do it. Don't want to enter those conversations with people.
I don't eat watermelon in public.
I don't, man. I don't. Because for the last 15 years of my life, I lived in predominantly white settings, and I know the stereotypes. Like, we were at a thing in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, right? I think in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and there was a watermelon eating competition. I'm the only black guy in the whole fair, right? There's a fairgrounds thing. I'm the only black guy in the whole fair. And my wife looks at me. Now my wife is she is a beautiful mixture of diversity, being a quarter Portuguese, a quarter Irish, quarter Native American, and a quarter African American. So she looks at me and she goes, "Steve, you should do it." And I said, "No,
sweetheart, babe."
Because either A, it's going to be, of course he won, or B, hey, I beat the black guy in the water. So no, I'm not. I didn't do it. I don't eat watermelon.
It's a no-win.
I'm not gonna do the watermelon contest, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Not gonna do it, dude.
I'm not gonna do it. Now, if it was chicken flavored, I'm just playing.
Chicken wing competition? No, I might.
A little different.
So KJ, let me ask you then. I know because we asked Prop about his, tokenism, and dealing with potential tokenisms, and that's actually been a great topic of conversation even at my church on my church staff. But on the other side of the coin, you being, as Andy Mineo said, a white guy in the black sport.
Right. Right.
Have you ever felt like the token white guy? I mean, I know you said
Absolutely.
Especially in the in hip hop setting.
The funny thing is, like when I first came out around 2000, I used to get a lot of bookings in black churches, and I don't know if that was because there was so little Christian rap to pick from, but I would definitely see a significant amount of shows where I was that, like, it was almost like a reverse diversity. I'm up there with the mime team, step choir, everyone in their mom's rap group, and then it's like me. And I actually noticed around 2002, all those shows dropped off, to where I have not gotten a booking like that in quite a while, and I couldn't understand. I was like, is my music changed to where I'm just not conducive to that setting, or is it just that now the black church has embraced Christian rap? Because I noticed at the beginning it was very, the black church really seemed to be behind the times as far as their embracing of Christian hip hop, whereas the white church was probably about 10 years ahead, and that's what was powering a lot of Christian hip hop. And so I thought, well, all of a sudden the sentiment changed in most of these gospel churches, and they had their own rappers to pick from. They didn't need to go and get a KJ, and to be honest, there was no desire for diversity anymore. So it was just like, we've got our own guys to pick from. And so that sort of tokenism, I guess you want to say, stopped happening. What I did see was I became the token rapper, if that makes sense. So areas that had never booked hip-hop ever,
you were safe.
I was safe. I was the safe white guy that you could bring in for your event that won't scare the people. And I'll be honest with you, I've been in two situations. One where a label basically said, we'll never sign you because you're white, and another situation where a label said, we're only signing you because you're white. And I really honestly didn't know where to deal with this. And then I started doing shows where essentially the shows were basically saying, we won't bring you into our show because you're white. This was a white pastor, because all my kids are black and they can't relate to you, so sorry. And I, to be honest with you, can look back over 15 years of doing this full time, never played New York City. I've never played Detroit. There's major cities that for 15 years that are super supporters of Christian hip hop, they don't book me. And I can't help but think, is this because now it's basically saying, well, we'd love to book you, but our people won't dig you. Whether that's a musical choice, whether that's a racial choice, or I'll be honest with you, I really don't know what it is, and it's a source of frustration for me, because I've tried to make inroads, I've tried to make, and I understand music, I understand style comes down to a lot of it, I do get that, but I can't help but think sometimes that what has made me safe to one group has also made me unsafe to another. So people are like, oh, why don't you ever play New York City? I was like, I don't know, I've never been booked.
Interesting. I'm surprised you never played New York. I'm very surprised.
I take it back. Let me be fair. I did play like a Wednesday night driving through in Washington Heights, was like a hookup of a hookup with a friend. It wasn't like a full-blown show. And in all fairness, so I've been invited to the Kingdom Choice Awards, but an actual show that came through, I played the Detroit suburbs. I'll be honest with you, my bread and butter is like the Midwest. It's like my manager calls me king of the bee market. Because it's like, is your population under 5,000? Have you never done a rap show before? We got the guy for you. Like, that's like where I've been eating off of for a long time. But to be honest with you, man, the genre has changed in a lot of ways, because now what used to be rock was like the staple of most CCM white churches. It's not anymore. That's really significantly changed. So I think Christian hip hop has actually been a great catalyst for racial reconciliation in a lot of ways. At least if you would look at the show. and the people that show up.
Well,
That's
how do
what
we
we
take it?
found.
Like, how does it go past the show? Because I'll go to, like, so let's say I'll go to a Verge conference. Would they try to display diversity in numerous ways? I love Verge. Great folks over at Austin Stone. Go to Verge conference and they'll try to, and they'll display diversity with having spoken word as a regular part of
Right.
the situation. But then you go to some other places where, and in Verge, it feels kind of natural. There's a fit to it where some of the audience is still trying to warm up to it, there's still just kind of this vibe within the whole layout of Verge where it feels natural. But then you go to some of these other places and, it feels forced because they feel like they're supposed to try to be diverse. So here's so it's a two-part question. One, I'll start with the harder question first. And I'll ask this to Prop first, and KJ, you can chime in. Prop, why is it in the talk about diversity? Why is it primarily always put on the majority or on white culture to say, hey, you need to be diverse, when a lot of the same kind of exclusion goes on in in the Black or Hispanic or Asian church? Why is the emphasis put on white churches to say, hey, no, you need to be diverse?
That's the one question? I thought you were going to
Yeah, that's one question. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll say this.
Part two, how do you take it? How do you take with that, whatever your answer is in mind? How do we take that and take it beyond just the display and put it where it's diverse on stage, but still white, or all black behind the scenes, but still genuinely diverse everywhere, where it's real?
Yeah. I'll start to answer that by using Verge as a great example. Verge, their diversity comes from a diverse staff, number one. So it starts there. And then number two, they're not just putting together events, they're curators. And I think the role of the curator is something that is very undervalued. You know what I mean? In that the person because the curator is looking for the voice, looking for that person, and they're not looking to fill a particular slot, if you will. They're looking for what is the scene, what is the culture producing, and when you're out hunting for that, when you are a curator, you're hunting for that flavor, that good art, you're going to naturally see it in multiple areas. So it wasn't like somebody said, yo, we need an Asian person to talk about this. It's just the Asian person just happened to be the expert. You know what I'm saying? So that's the person that we brought in because you're a curator and or a tastemaker. Curators, tastemakers, these are the ones that like goes and find out, yo, this is what's hot right now. It's like, so if we do it in restaurants all the time. There's no like nobody has this particular there's not a social systemic oppression for Italian food, if you will. Like that don't exist. But if you just happen to be in an area and the freshest little food truck is this like, pasta fusion joint, like I'm gonna bring that in. It's not because I need to somehow or another support this ethnic minority food. It's because, that's just hot right now, and I'm a curator, so I'm looking for it. I'm not just looking at just what's readily available to me. You know what I'm saying? So if you look at just what's readily available to you, you're stuck with just those options, and then you may get a very homogenous stage. But that's because you're not really looking for it. Does that make sense? There are people, I would even say it in music. There are artists that like have never had a radio single ever in their life, but will sell out 2,000 seaters, you know what I'm saying, within hours of putting up a show, because people don't just look for music that's readily available. It's those that are out there hunting down what's music. So if you got tastemakers at the helm, you got curators at the helm, then this type of diversity happens. Now, having said that, the onus of the dominant culture church or community versus the subdominant community, and I'm going to use those terms on purpose because the dominant and subdominant like motif isn't just along race lines. Like if you were to walk into if we were in Nigeria, you have like a dominant tribe versus a subdominant tribe. So it plays out in multiple arenas. So having said that, that part of the responsibility of being the dominant tribe and benefiting from what it takes, benefiting from what that causes is, yeah, the onus is on you because you're the dominant one. Right. Now, in reverse, why you don't see that in an Asian church or in a Latino church is because of a language barrier, right? So, are we really mad at the Korean church on the corner for not bringing me in? Like, am I really mad at them? I'm not mad at them. I don't speak Korean. Right. You know what I'm saying? So there's a language barrier, right? Why my in-laws have never been to my church is because my pastor don't speak Spanish. Right. We ain't got a Spanish pastor. So does he need to, which is kind of something we said for a lot of young dudes that are looking to plant in Los Angeles, looking to plant church in Los Angeles. Like, I suggest you, anywhere in California, you better learn Spanish before you plan on planting a church here. You know what I'm saying? Or you have already decided that your church will be monocultural because you don't speak the language. You know what I'm saying? So I think if that's the case, and then I'll jump it up more with the black church. Now, African American Christian is actually a much different cultural experience than what we can say is the black church, because that's a whole other thing. Does that make sense? That the reality is none of us is in it. You know what I'm saying? None of us getting invited to that. You know what I mean? But why I'm okay with it is because I don't make their music. I'm not a part of a mass choir. I don't make mass choir music. So these things are aesthetic choices and relatability choices that's fine. I really don't have any particular issue, if you will, if I were to walk into a church that, you know what I'm saying, that really has no desire for hip hop or no desire for poetry. I think that, again, play your lane and play your lane well. Like, I feel like I don't need every stage. I feel like we've been handpicked and designed for particular roles, and if KJ is better for the job, let him do the job. I don't need to do, if I'm a hammer and the job calls for a screwdriver, use the screwdriver. Right. Like, that's not a diss. That's not, you're not discriminating in an evil way against the hammer because the screwdriver is doing, it's better for the job. You know what I'm saying? But I think the onus of talking about diversity, or not necessarily talking about it, because we all talk about diversity, right? But the onus of making or having the weight to make strides toward it is on the dominant culture's shoulder, is because the dominant culture caused it. Right. So if you caused the problem, then yes, your job to fix the problem. To fix it.
I could say, as actually was talking about this, I was thinking about the Dubb Awards versus the Stellar Awards, and how I had this conversation a couple years ago. I actually say, going even farther back, when I started winning Dubb Awards for this genre, I started experiencing a lot of backlash. I had blogs written about me. I had articles written about me basically saying that I was taking money away from more deserving black rappers, that I was only winning or being nominated for these categories and winning because of being white. And so I had to counteract that by saying, if you go through the history of it, there's been more black and Hispanic rappers that have won this category. But the perception is, and it's like almost a Macklemore versus Kendrick thing, that when the white guy wins something that is a black guy's art form, you're a culture vulture, you're a stealer, you're just taking from the minority being the majority, and it's the Elvis effect. Mm-hmm. So I also conjectured back with saying, well, then why have I been looked over for years of a Stellar Award nomination? Now you could say, well, you don't make the music that appeals to the Stellar Awards, but I would have to also say, well, I've done hip hop that's just as significant as other people that are in that category. So do I, as a white male, have a right to be angry about being overlooked for a Stellar Award? And my answer was no, I don't, because the reality is that being in the majority for something that is so specific to a culture and to a genre, that I don't have the right to get angry about that. And there is no Al Sharpton that's going to picket the Stellar Awards for KJ. so to speak. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So my point was his point, is that the burden is going to be on the majority because you are just that. You are the majority. And the hammer versus screwdriver thing is very significant. But I think there are times, I would just have to counteract and say, there are times where people go with the other thing even though the hammer could work too. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I think that's where artists like myself and him, where we have to learn to be bridge builders and not bridge burners.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm actually glad you brought up the Tope or the Macklemore Kendrick thing or the culture vulture thing, because I think there's a large difference between an ally or like a cultural appropriation versus someone who's authentically, you know, a part of the scene. So when I think of a KJ, like me knowing about like a Sons of Intellect or like knowing about this like history of someone who you've just been a part of hip hop, or even the same thing with Andy. Like Andy is what he is. You know what I'm saying? And he's not attempting to become something that this image of what he thinks like rap should be. This dude just grew up in hip hop. So, and as someone who also grew up in hip hop, the answer has always been real, recognize real. There's always been white guys in hip hop, from Third Base to like. There's always been white rappers. And no one ever had anything to say about it because they were authentically in the scene. You was in the struggle with us. So no one had anything to say about it. But
there's been people.
I would say them the 5%ers.
I would say
them the 5%ers.
How can a polar bear swing on the vines of a gorilla? I'll leave it at that. If you know what that line's from. Hey, there has been. I do. But you're right.
Let's say
those that appreciate the culture, that don't come in on some like I own the house, that play the role and understand that you are a guest in the house of hip hop.
Exactly. So with that understanding, it's a very obvious difference between that and someone who is profiteering off something that they're mimicking. And I think we can run a gang of names down for that.
But can't we in the sense of hip hop culture? But can't we also say that about black people who are doing the same thing, who are not hip hop culture, but still very much so profiteering off the culture?
I think the difference is that it would be looked at as a way out. It's kind of like saying if a white guy comes in, doesn't appreciate the culture, he's a culture stealer. If a black guy comes in, doesn't appreciate the culture, hey, he's trying to get money. He's trying to make himself better.
There's an understanding of the context. Like I look at like a Nicki Minaj, who I'm not a fan of at all, but with her, she understands the context and has made a conscious decision to just make music that makes money, right? A Lil Wayne or somebody like that, like they just made a conscious decision. Like you have somebody like a 2 Chainz who went to Tuskegee Institute, if you will. The guy's a Tuskegee graduate. Like he's a brilliant man. He made a conscious. Say it again.
4.0.
4.0. He made a conscious decision. I think it was I disagree with the decision, but he made a conscious decision to go down the lane that he's going, but he understands the context or the cultural milieu, if you will, the struggle that forged what we would call black music. Because I'm going to sit hip-hop in the same thing as R&B and as jazz and as blues. Like it sits in the same narrative, but it doesn't necessarily mean that others can't participate in that narrative. You understand what I'm saying? So if you see it as a river, if you will, anyone can jump in there. Anyone can swim in the Mississippi. You understand what I'm trying to say? But its origins still has the same origin. So it's like, so with any sort of like music that, any type of soul music that you would make, anyone has any right to participate in it. You can participate if you want to. You know what I'm saying? But where the offense comes from is when you attempt to dig a ditch next to the river. You understand what I'm trying to say? Right. And mimic what we're doing. You know what I mean? And then that's where the offense comes from. Why would someone like a Justin Timberlake or like a Robin Thicke be accepted to perform at the BET Awards? Because the brothers got soul.
Right.
Like I was what it say. He got soul. You know what I'm saying? He's making, and it's soul music. There's nothing you can argue with about it. You know what I'm saying? So in that situation, there's a very distinct difference between the two, and I think that it is sad when someone who's been a part of the genre, you know what I'm saying, is kind of lumped in with what would be a culture.
Well, I can say too is that obviously whites have had a long history of taking things that belong to others and exploiting it and chewing it up and moving along to where jazz is considered to be Kenny G or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Whereas those that were forerunners have, rock and roll, we never think of that as a black man's art form anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying I think hip-hop would be well placed to feel like their guard should be up, I guess you could say, when it comes to those things. And that's just the reality. And the guys that I've known over the years, and I'll be honest with you, the reality is too is that some white people have a fascination with the other side.
Yeah.
So a white kid grows up suburban, he doesn't know anything about that world. All he knows is what's been fed to him through the media. So he is fascinated. It is a form of escape. As much as a black man growing up in an inner city wonders what it's like to rock polo and Tommy Hilfiger, because that represents a whole other side. Cultural appropriation goes both ways, and we are all victims and all participants in it.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality being, people should feel that way. I think they have a right to feel that way. Those that come in with a certain sense of respect are generally the ones that stick around.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why, like on my new record, I have so many. It's just a return to form for me as far as my Christian hip-hop roots. There is no rock bands on there. I went back to those that I built relationships over the years, whether it's a KB, a Tadashi, a Lecrae, this guy, you name it. So, yeah.
Boom.
Boom. Boom skis.
Word. Gentlemen, as we wrap up, as we're talking about a very touchy subject, which I'm convinced will still continue to be talked about in barbershops, churches, should be talked about in churches across our country. We're coming up, from what we're told, within the next maybe week or two, a very monumental decision coming out of coming out from the grand jury in Ferguson. Tense moment in our country. What would you guys say as people who have had to, for lack of a better comparison, kind of be fish in different waters? What would you say to people as we're bracing for this, dealing with this tension and wrestling with this tension? What would you say to people?
I say just be yourself, and the love of God covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah, I'd say that compassion needs to be paramount, and it doesn't require sameness. Like, we don't have to be the same to be compassionate, and make that your first priority rather than taking a side. Just be compassionate.
Word. Well, gentlemen, thank you. So for those who may not be knowing, these two are together right now. They're not performing together, but they are both in Sacramento tonight. So if you're in, if you're up in NorCal, go ahead and check out Propaganda. Go ahead and check out KJ-52. KJ, are you performing tonight as well?
Yeah, we're here at Capital Christian. That's where we shot this. So we're doing something with their youth ministry. I know he's at another church that I was at yesterday. So.
I'm at the house.
Prop, what can they catch in the crew tonight?
Where's the place, Paul? It's the house. Bayside Church. The house, yeah.
That's up in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And tomorrow you're going to be down in Bay here in San Jose, right down the street from me. I'll be there checking you out with the crew. You, Swoop, and Jake.
My G.
I will see you out there.
They're over there. I don't know if you can see them yet. Turn it down a little. Angle. Boom. Swoop, Jay Givens, he's sleeping.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. And for those of you who haven't yet, go ahead and cop KJ's new album, The Mental. You can still catch Prop on tour if he hasn't come to your town, but he's coming. Check out Facebook and also HumbleBeats.com for some shows. And KJ, what website can people go to check out where you're going to be?
KJ-52.com.
Word.
Easy.
Thanks, gentlemen.
All right, Mike.